Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Outlaw. I'm the founder of The Extended Mind.
And I'm Sara Carbonneau. I'm a researcher on the team.
And Sara and I are here at the Gatherverse Summit. We are pre-recording our talk about privacy and data collection in the metaverse. And we're excited to share some results with you.
Let's get started.
All right. So the title of this talk is called "Don't Track My Life." This is an actual quote that came from one of the survey responses. And it shows a little bit of like what you're going to see and people's attitudes towards privacy and data collection today. So in this project, the Extended Mind surveyed about 1,000 people in the US to assess consumer knowledge about current data practices and protections, gather people's attitudes towards privacy, and then test implications of VR and AR tech. And this research was sponsored by Meta Reality Labs. This gives you a sense of who the Extended Mind is. We are a research and strategy firm that's based in Portland, Oregon, and we've been involved in doing multiple projects as it relates to ethics in the metaverse, privacy, security, safety, and more. So today, Sara and I are going to be here representing the Extended Mind, sharing some of the results. And this is what our goals are. We're just going to highlight a couple of the key findings from the research. It's a 50-page white paper that came out from this, so we're not going to have time to share everything that we found. We just want to give you a little bit of a flavor and then invite you to access the full research, which is on our website. And then you can download it and go into more depth in whatever areas are most interesting to you. Here, I want to give you a sense of who were the respondents who replied to the survey. We used an outside panel company in order to find these respondents. We weighted it to the census on a number of dimensions, so that way we can have like a semi-representative sample to draw on. And here's where it fell out. We had about 45% of people who were tech savvy, a lot of people who play video games or identify as gamers, people who are familiar with augmented reality, and 12% actually own a virtual reality headset. So here we feel like we got a good mix of people who are tech savvy and who don't identify as being tech savvy, and then have these other ways of interacting with technology. So that way we feel like our answers are grounded in the reality of like many different people across the US. And here's a couple implications from the survey. Overall, we captured a lot of discomfort, distress, and examples of how some existing data practices feel like privacy violations. So there were a lot of people who said there are products and services today that they won't use due to privacy concerns. And then about a fifth of people shared that they have experienced a privacy violation that they are aware of. So you'll see as we go along, like there's many different ways that this discomfort and distress is coming out. And, I would really like to make the point that privacy defaults and data norms really affect people's trust in products and services. So we'll talk a little bit more about these research implications at the end of today's presentation. But right now, I'm going to turn it over to Sara. She's going to give a little bit of an overview when it comes to privacy management and what people are doing. So Sara, take it away.
Great, thank you. Yeah, one of the pieces we were really curious about was if people were managing their own privacy and how. And the way that we inquired about this was we ended up asking if they used any privacy or security services, if they paid for any of those products or services, and whether they were changing their own privacy settings. And we found that an astounding number of people are actively managing their own privacy. 87% reported using a privacy or security service, such as a do not call list, an ad blocker, a VPN, things like that. And 50% were even paying for what they were using. And what's really impressive about this is that these are all services that people had to seek out on their own and spent, their personal time doing so. And we found that 37% changed their privacy settings in just the past 3 months alone. And so from this, we can really see that people are really engaged in their own online privacy and actively taking steps to manage it. And with these questions, we gave people an opportunity to express why they were changing their privacy settings or why they were managing their own privacy. And one of the main motivations for people was a desire for more privacy and security. People said that companies are not doing enough to secure their websites and data, including my own. Or I want companies to have less access to my data. Don't want data about me or my habits sold. Don't want anyone to have access to my online profiles without my express permission. And this really shows that current standards of privacy aren't meeting people's needs. And along with this, people express that default settings are just not sufficiently private for them. People said they changed their settings because they thought it would reduce the abuse of their privacy, or because they were uncomfortable with how much of their privacy they wanted to invade. And these words like abuse and invade really show how strongly people feel their privacy, is compromised by default settings or current data collection and sharing standards. Additionally, people specifically cited location tracking as a reason they changed their privacy settings, because location services are just particularly uncomfortable for people. One person said, I turned off my location services on most apps because it's none of their damn business where I am. And we got a lot of it's none of their damn businesses and the qualitative responses. Additionally, someone said, I set all my settings to private and turn off my location trackers while out with my child and fiance, which really shows that location tracking is not only a matter of privacy, but for some people, a matter of security. And lastly, we found that notifying consent models weren't necessarily working for people. Some people, when we asked what had happened to them that felt like a privacy violation online, they reported like when I visited websites looking at products, and then I received ads or emails regarding what I was looking at in my inbox. And I think what this shows is that people are probably agreeing to things under notifying consent models without actually knowing what they're agreeing to. And this just goes to show that the model might not be working for consumers.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Yeah. So what Sarah's done is she's just given a flavor of like what people are doing right now as it relates to managing privacy and what's motivating that. A lot of that data is based on people's experiences with 2D and 3D technology. I'm sorry, 2D technology. So mobile, tablet, like computer. And where I'm going to go next is we tested some scenarios as it relates to 3D technology, the VR, the AR, like the spatial apps, and really the potential for using data that's like the additional data streams that VR and AR devices bring. So we're going to pivot from a little bit of like how people are managing privacy today and what's informing that to where this could potentially go with VR, AR tech in the future. So there's going to be a couple things where we're going to go through. One is data sharing and selling. The next is bystander privacy. I'm not going to talk a lot about employer data collection and inferences. These would be use cases where employers could potentially be surveilling their employees and the power dynamics that are related to that. Just in the interest of time, I'm not going to be presenting on that, but if enterprise or employer use cases as it relates to VR and AR are interesting to you, that's a place where you can find more in the full report. So first up, people are least comfortable with their data being sold. So if you look at the chart on the right-hand side, the orange indicates being uncomfortable, the blue indicates comfortable. And so we presented a list of scenarios about, suppose this data had been collected via a wearable device inferences were made about this data, or this data was potentially sold, or this data was used for something like customizing the experience of the product. And you can see that there's a pretty strong gradation where when it comes to selling data, people are least comfortable with that. People do have a pretty high level of discomfort with inferences that are being made about them. But it's less than when your data is being sold. And then the third tier is about what about data that's being used for product improvements. And here, like, about a third of people are still saying, like, no, like, I don't necessarily want that. So it really seems to be this tension about the context can drive so much around these preferences, and we have a lot more richness as it relates to like why we picked these scenarios and additional scenarios that we tested in the full white paper. The reason that I wanted to present this particular slide is it shows to what extent people's preferences can be very contextually driven, and at the same time, there seems to be this like third of people, or here like about 31% of people, where no matter what the use case was, they were still pretty uncomfortable with that potential use case. And I think that's a little bit surprising, given that we just see so many products out there that are very popular because they customize the experience of the product. So this seems to be like a bit of a fundamental tension that we're looking at in these results, which is people have these really strong preferences for privacy, and at the same time, we see like massive adoption of products that are using data to customize the experience of the product. So again, this seems like an opportunity for future research. Another set of questions we had in the study was about, suppose you're captured in a hypothetical video. What would be your level of comfort being captured in a hypothetical video? And our theory was that people would have really different preferences based on if the video was taken by a stranger, a neighbor, or a friend. But it turned out that people were pretty uncomfortable with it, and it didn't really matter who was taking the video. What we did find made more people comfortable was if we said that their face would be blurred. And at that point, they were like, oh, like that would actually change something for me. Just given like the implications for bystander privacy with VR, AR technology, or especially AR glasses becoming more and more popular, or as they're projected to be in the future. I think bystander is an area that would be very interesting to continue research in the future. All right. So this has been a pretty quick overview of what was a year-long research project for Sara and me, but hopefully you're getting a little bit of the flavor of the types of work that you can learn more about from us. So people really, really valued their privacy. It's something that they said over and over is inherently good and valuable to them. Secondly, many find existing data practices insufficient to like what their actual privacy preferences are. And I think this goes back to what Sara shared about the 37% of people who have changed their privacy settings in the past 3 months, or just have a distrust of updates or whatever the defaults are. I think this, again, this really just speaks to this tension that people have, where they really want privacy, but they're not always sure about how their data is being used or what data is being used. And then something else is that we didn't have time to share with you all today is some of the existing privacy protections that have come out, such as the California Consumer Privacy Law and facial recognition bans that exist in certain geographies in the US. And awareness of those privacy protections is relatively low. And if those types of regulations are interesting to you, again, you can access that info in the full report. So what directions are we going to take this in the future? And what are the follow-up questions that Sarah and I have been talking about with our team? Overall, I think it's really important to understand how are people negotiating these privacy trade-offs, because people seem to have these preferences. They also seem to have take actions that aren't always well aligned with those preferences. And so, how are there ways to better help people align their preferences with their actions? Another thing is that I'm very curious about is to what extent do technological solutions such as edge computing, differential privacy, etc., reduce or eliminate people's privacy concerns? I think edge computing has huge potential as like a privacy preserving mechanism. Keeping data on the device could actually reduce a lot of the Fourth Amendment concerns when it comes to privacy. And at the same time, I'm really curious to what extent people will grasp these as technological solutions. Will they accept these? Like what sort of explanations will help them accept them more? Or does there need to be another type of rethinking about other ways to solve like these privacy concerns, or like just like the level of distress that people have right now? Bystander privacy, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of potential to understand, what are the norms in public spaces? How do you best facilitate a relationship between the XR device users and bystanders? And then lastly, really expand out the XR scenarios tested with more details. So we tested, a number of scenarios, and at the same time, like I would never say that like we have a really comprehensive view of every single scenario where XR could come up or where XR devices will be used. And I think that would be another future research project to do to really expand that out. But I'm really glad with like what we can offer right now in terms of the scenarios. So at least we have a baseline of people's attitudes in 2021. And as time goes on, we could potentially do more longitudinal research and see how that changes over time. And then lastly, I just want to invite everybody to check out our website and download the final report. We also wrote specific takeaways for product teams as well as for policymakers. And lastly, we have a series of infographics as well to really make this data a little bit more digestible and shareable. And yeah, we really hope that this has been helpful to you as you think about your own attitudes towards privacy and what is like on the minds of consumers who are interacting with technology today. So with that, I will just say thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah.